Let's see if we are on. It says that we are on. So if you are there, I want to hear where you are from, or actually, please post where you're from, because I would love to learn. I've been so amazed at all the different audience and everybody that's been sending love and everything, from Australia, from Ireland, from, oh, hold on a second. Let me just change this here. From all the different parts of the world. It's just so heartwarming. So as you know, the classroom is being garbled up, and that is by design. It is very discouraging when you work so hard and you only see one number there or two numbers, but really it's not real. I think it's part of the discouragement, garble, brain rewrite stuff. So I don't play those games. So I'm here for you, whoever shows up. And so for those of you who do show up, please make sure that you text and call and tell everybody about the classroom and the difference that it's making in people's lives. I know that it's made a difference in my life. So today, as you know, let me just get the record on for the podcast and BitChute.
Before you go to record, I need co-host.
Oh, yes. Okay, here we go. Here we go. You got that? Okay, perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and do the record. Here we go. Let me just make sure that we are live on, yep, it looks like we are live on Facebook as well. Okay. So now I'm going to hit the record button so that we can start the classroom. Here we go. Now, for those of you who are new to the classroom and have been learning about health and wellness and all of that, please know that I have experienced a bit of a health crisis myself. And after the theme song, I will share a little bit about that. And then after that, I get to introduce you once again to my wonderful, handsome husband, who will be joining us to talk about how to take your marriage back. And since it is, so fasten your seatbelts, because it's time to learn and grow together, and it's time to dance. Here we go.
The Lillian McDermott Show.
We love, we fear. Bridges we burn, we make mistakes, then we live and learn. When life gets tough, and it seems like your best ain't good enough. If you're in need of hope, you know where I'll be right here, right here. And when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here, waiting for
you. This is the place you can always turn to when you need a friend. The Lillian McDermott Show. To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Hello, my listening and viewing friend. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful, best day ever. For those of you who are new to the classroom, please know I've been waiting for you. This is a safe place where you can go to when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide alternative ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening, as well as my viewing friend, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. Now, before we talk about our topic today, I am going to share, actually, before I have Robert join us, I'm going to share a little bit about the health crisis I've been going through, and I'm so grateful to all your love and support. But when Robert joins us, we're going to shift gears and we're going to talk about that loving support that we get from our loved ones, the one that you call a partner, the one that you call your husband or your wife, someone who is been with you and understands you, sees you, and still loves you, flaws and all. And so many times in our lives, we get stuck in a rut, stuck in a place where it's just not good, or we don't know what to do. And it's those times that people give up too soon. So Robert and I are going to be talking about that in a little bit. And and it's so appropriate that he would come today, that I'd be talking about the, last week, after I interviewed Jason Stevenson, and last Tuesday. So it was a week ago yesterday. Jason came on, and I was not feeling very well. I wasn't doing very well. And I knew it was beyond anything I'd ever experienced before, because there were some symptoms that I'll share in another class, because we're going to have Dr. Grameth and perhaps Dr. Day talk about what I went through and what was going on. So at that time, I made it through the class, but after that, I knew it was time to schedule appointments, and the rest of the week was cleared off. And it was because I was diagnosed with a condition. Well, I won't tell you the name of the condition, but it's gallbladder issues that needed, my gallbladder needed to come out. And in my usual flair, I decided to do my own personal research, listen to God, and listen to some people that I trust, Dr. Day, Dr. Grameth, about what I should do. And after much prayer, I decided to do a cleanse. And man, I am going to share about that cleanse in a future class. But I have averted. I'm not going to do surgery. As of now, I am well enough. I am strong enough, and this cleanse helped me get rid of some stones. That's the interesting part of this. And but through it all, I had my life partner, my best friend, the man I call my husband, who is going to show himself up and unmute himself in a little second, if he is still listening, because that happens when you've been married a long time. People stop listening. But anyway, he's going to come on. He was going to talk about how to take your marriage back. And it's something that I've been wanting to do with him for a while. And it's been, it's been probably a couple years, maybe even 3. Last week, we played the last time he was on the classroom, as we talk about marriage. And so that was from 2018, I believe. And so it's been a while since he's been on as my co-host, as my co-partner. And so today he is here so we can discuss, how to take your marriage back. But let me tell you, it is so wonderful to have a partner who sees you, hears you, and still loves you despite of your flaws and all. So since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am grateful that my husband, Robert McDermott, is here, and I will share along the way as well, is here to do just that. Thank you, Robert, for coming on. I know that you're really busy at the beginning of the classroom and at the end of the classroom, so I'm glad that you were able to make it all work.
Well, you're welcome. It's interesting that you mentioned the last time I was on was 2018, because I know I've been on the show a lot, but it really has been the radio part of it over the first several years. Yeah. So since you've kind of shifted to YouTube and Facebook Live, this might be the first time I've been on since you've gone into the video. So I'm happy to be there and look forward to talking about this.
Well, I'm glad that you're here as well. For those of you who are finding yourself where your marriage is in crisis, well, my health was in crisis, but instead of removing my gallbladder, I stopped and I thought, what can I do while I'm waiting for my test results? What can I do? And there's a bit of a metaphor here when it comes to marriages too. I don't know if you think that, Robert, and you can share your perspective on it, but there's a bit of a metaphor that sometimes we tend to be quick to rush to the conclusion, which is, separation, divorce, never speak to each other. But sometimes it's really good to take a pause and step back, which has saved our marriage many times. Just step back, maybe even call a truce and start working or dating each other and doing the things that we should have done all along. And so that's what I've been finding myself doing now with this issue with the gallbladder. And it just has made me see that sometimes we take things for granted, like the liver and the gallbladder, take it for granted. And as a result, you may do things without even thinking that when you know there's a crisis, all of a sudden, things change. What do you think about that, Robert?
Well, I haven't been thinking about it. So as you're talking, making the connection between a health issue and a relationship issue, it makes sense. It makes sense that we do get kind of caught up, and I think our emotions tend to drive that. We get caught up in our ego, we get caught up in our emotions, and we kind of go down a path and make decisions that can be very harmful. So I like the fact that you took a pause, took a time out before you jumped into just doing what they were recommending. And I do think that does apply to us, that in a relationship, it's great to kind of take a time out and let go of the emotions and think in a different way and think more clearly before proceeding.
Yeah. And not only that, Robert, we found that everybody had an opinion. And if you didn't do it their way, they were saying, oh, well, you are being irresponsible or reckless. You know, a lot of things can go wrong. So that was the scenario by which others outside who didn't know what I was going through, really, it was just, you know, the diagnosis, but didn't even ask. They just assumed the worst case scenario. And in marriage, sometimes we go down that route, the worst case scenario. And I think one of the things that I really have loved about our marriage, and I'm not saying that our marriage has been, you know, lollipops and you know, whatever.
What a word to use, lollipops.
Lollipops and unicorns, but you know, we've really worked at it. We notice when we're taking each other for granted. One of us will speak up. Sometimes we have to argue about it, but then at the end of that, at the end of the breakdown comes the breakthrough. And many times people don't wait for that breakthrough. So like when I decided to do the cleanse, people were not wanting to even hear about that. And the results, only one person has come back and asked me about the results. And the results were remarkable. And so can a marriage go through that transformation once you're willing to risk doing something different and new. And so I wanted to see what you thought about that, Robert.
I was taken back. I was surprised by the, you used the word worst case scenario. I was surprised by the number of people that saw this as black and white, as like a light switch. You're either healthy or you need to go to surgery. And that continuation in the middle of, hey, let's, figure out where you are on a continuum and figure out how urgent or how much risk there is. So all I could say to the people that were texting me or calling was, we're going to do everything we can to identify the risks, to assess the current situation and the options in front of us. And then ultimately, I would say, you're an adult person and you are doing research and you surround yourself with good resources and you're going to make a decision that's really best based on that assessment, if you will. And so I was surprised that people kind of jumped to the worst case scenario and then suggesting or pushing toward a treatment based on that worst case scenario, which I don't believe was really the right thing to do. So in that, I'm not sure I'm ready to make the connections to the marriage crisis.
Well, sometimes people do not work on, they think about the worst case scenario and they go with that. And because they're in that worst case scenario, they don't give healing a chance in a marriage. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And maybe not.
we have over the course of time, people have lots of experience in relationships and maybe lose the commitment to it or the patience for working through it, and then maybe jump right to, hey, it's not worth it. This is too much trouble. I'm going to move on, to something else. So I can see that connection, if that makes any sense.
Good. So for those of you who are watching today that may be suffering, or maybe the romance is out of the marriage, or maybe you're taking each other for granted, like I've taken my gallbladder and liver, didn't even think about it. I'm not a big drinker. So you think of that. I remember, as I was younger, I would take Tylenol just in case I'd get a headache. That's how, that would probably, and the medications that I've been on for asthma in the past. But in the last 9 years, my life has been completely different. It's completely been changed and all of that. But with that in mind, marriages can go into a pattern of taking each other for granted, of causing harm, not intentional, but maybe being neglectful, or maybe being just not even thinking about the other person, And so today, if you want to text me, if you have an issue that you want to make it through, I am a life coach, and Robert is a spiritual director. So he has gone through the Audiri program as a spiritual director, so he can absolutely help as well. So if you guys have any questions, whether it's you or your spouse, or maybe a person that you are serious with, long-term relationship, if you have any questions, type in a Q, write your question, or you can text me at 407-373-5959 if you want to remain anonymous. Okay, so there are different phases of love, and I wanted to go through those phases of love to see what phase you are in. Stage 1 is falling in love. That's lust. That's that you're falling in love. Everything that person does, whether it's a good habit or a bad habit, is cute. And I remember my ex-sister-in-law coming to me, talking about my brother, saying, "Oh, he's so cute. He's such a pig." And I said, well, if in 10 years that's still cute, good, but don't put up with it now. But they're no longer married. But I'm just saying that, we tend to ignore and neglect some of those things, thinking they'll go away. No, they intensify, they magnify. And all of you who have been married for a long time, you know what I'm talking about. Then it's like excitement, becoming a couple, and it's different and new. Then there's the stage 3, which is disillusionment. It's like, who did I marry? Why did I marry this person? What was I insane? Was I smoking too much crack? What was it about it? And you become very disillusioned with the partner that you're with. Then stage 4 and stage 5 are the ones that are transformative. This is the one where you're really truly creating long-lasting love. And stage 5 is using the power of 2 to change the world. That's when you're really evolved. I know that Robert and I have gone through marriage encounter. We were a marriage encounter couple. We were a presenting couple. We stopped doing that. Once I started going through personal growth, they wouldn't allow us to do 2 ministries at the same time. And personal growth became very important. And for me, Robert, and I don't know about you, but I feel, although it was wonderful that we did a lot of marriage stuff together, I feel that the missing link in our marriage was working on ourselves and taking personal responsibility for ourselves. What would you like to say about that?
In the preparation for having our discussion today, I kind of thought through what are some of the keys. You had mentioned keys to a loving relationship. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the very top issues. I think too many people, and then therefore affecting the relationship, too many people don't make a commitment for individual or personal growth, to put themselves under a microscope, to check the status of their life, to do something to grow. And it's something that has made a huge difference in our marriage, especially in the past 10 or 12 years. As you said, we had gone through the marriage encounter, which was 15 years ago, and we'd gone through some Bible studies and some other things. But once we made a commitment to focus on our individual growth, what happens is people are not whole. They're broken in some ways. They have limiting beliefs in some ways. And so they're not quite healthy and whole as an individual. And they bring that into the relationship. And they often join or enter into a relationship because they want or hope or expect that that person, that partner, will help them to become whole. But what typically happens is they find somebody else who is not whole, and they end up having a relationship that becomes not strong because they're not whole. And so it's a huge problem in relationships. And so our commitment to individual personal growth individually has then allowed us to become stronger as a couple. So yeah, I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, I think that the term that I remember Deacon Al, who was one of our mentors along the way, he say you have to be committed to the commitment, because there's going to be times where you're going to want to walk away. But if you're committed to the commitment, you will see it through all the way through. And that was something that, and it's a good thing that neither one of us wanted to walk away at the same time. It's like, if one was frustrated, the other one was, a little bit more balanced, or vice versa. That we've, some people, like, there was a time in our marriage, and I've shared this before, when we were married about 7 years. Now, keep in mind, both Robert and I have been married before. So when we went through, this is so great. What I love about Robert is that we have gone through this journey of curiosity together. So when we got married, not only did the church mandate it, but we wanted to do it too. We wanted to go through courses, what to expect. And I remember when, here we are, we're like all in love, and we're a couple. And so we're at the new stage of it, because Robert asked me to marry him 1 month after we started dating. So it was a whirlwind, and he had 3 kids. I had 2 kids. So the Catholic Church at the time asked us to take a course for couples that have gotten, it's like second marriages. Blended families. That's it. Thank you, honey. Blended family workshop. And I remember Robert and I going there just like, oh, this is so good. And all of a sudden the statistics are 75% chance that our marriage is going to end. What I heard is that we have 25% chance to win. So those are the things that when you're in love and you're like, oh, it's like, what are you? You're very selective to continue the path that you're going on. But I had no doubt when I met Robert that he would be the person I would spend the rest of my life with. And when I say that, that doesn't mean that things haven't come at difficult times. Like, we've gone through a lot of losses, and we've gone through a lot of trials and tribulations, but through it all, we have been not only committed to the commitment, but committed to each other. And every time I think of that 25% chance of survival rate, I think, it was false. It's a limiting belief that was planted in us that we could have bought into, right?
Yeah, when I first heard Deacon Al say, you got to be committed to your commitment, I have to be honest, I was confused by that. It didn't become clear in my mind until I put some thought into it. But what happens is we made the commitment when we said, I do. We made the commitment to each other. And sometimes you just have to remember that you made that commitment. And it's worth, because you made that commitment, staying committed to that commitment so you can work at it a little bit. But, I want to speak to that 75% because that was eye-opening. Most people don't know that. I find that when I tell people that statistic, people are like, really? Why is that case? Because people just think, okay, there's a 50% chance of divorce. They think that's always the case. But what happens is, just like we talked before about the fact that there's not a commitment to work on yourself, and people come as broken, as people with limiting beliefs, as people who are not whole, they come into that relationship, they get divorced, often because of that, but then they find somebody who is just like the same kind of person that they married in the first place because they haven't gone through the growth. So many people make the mistake of not growing after the divorce. In fact, they jump right into another relationship without really processing it, learning from it, growing from it. Now, you and I went through a course called New Beginnings, and that allowed us, I can't quite remember it was 2 different sections. One was like 6 or 7 weeks, and the other one was like more than that. It was like 10 weeks.
It was like, the total, it was 21 weeks.
Yeah, so there was a lot. So
I went through the 21 weeks. Did you go through the 21 weeks?
Yeah, I went through all of it because
I did too.
The part 2 was about that personal growth, putting yourself under a microscope, realizing that we're not all we need to be, and how do we set ourselves up to avoid. So that 75%, it is real, and it takes that commitment to the commitment and that commitment to individual growth that is essential for helping avoid that becoming another statistic.
Yeah. And one of the things that it took us about 15 years, I would say. I remember we were going through a very difficult time, the housing crisis, and we had to close down the business, and we had to do a lot of, soul searching about where were we going, what's going to happen, and really truly trusting God during that time. And you had taken a job that was like 3 hours away from our home. And not only were we physically apart, but that's when I started my business. And I needed, you weren't there. And I was like, it was really, really difficult. And we recognized that when we were coming together, we were we had appointments and things with our kids and commitments that we had, until we realized this is not, I don't feel connected. We don't feel that connection. And immediately, once I said that out loud, Robert said, okay, let's do it. Because we had made a commitment that once we felt that way, that we would go to Marriage Encounter. And we did. And didn't you agree that was just a wonderful breath of fresh air to help us get through a very difficult time and be able to mourn some of the losses up to that point?
Yeah, I do agree. That was pivotal in our relationship. I'm hesitating because I'm thinking of so much that was going on at that time.
Yeah.
But you said one thing that I want to focus in on before I talk about that experience with World and Marriage Encounter. As you said, a lot was going on, and we had to learn how to trust God. And so that element of trusting God has been just absolutely a cornerstone to our relationship. When we got married, one of the things that helped me to know you were the right person for me was because you had a very strong belief in God and a strong relationship with God. And that was very important to me. And I wanted our relationship to be based on, if you will, the 3 elements: you, me, and God. And I remember Father David talking about the spokes on a bike wheel, and how you kind of start off at the bottom, but as you grow in your relationship with God and as you grow individually, you're growing closer and closer to God, but you're also getting closer and closer to each other. And so that being able to believe in God, trust in God, and bring God into the relationship, it's been, I don't know, I'd say the most important element in our marriage. And so when we became aware, I was working away like you said, 3 hours away and coming home on the weekends, and not always on the weekends. But when I did come home and we were feeling not connected, Worldwide Marriage Encounter was a wonderful experience that we would certainly recommend for everyone. You don't have to be Catholic, even though it's kind of sponsored by and run by the Catholic Church. You do want to be a believer in God, a believer, hopefully as a Christian.
Yeah.
But the experience was so beneficial to helping us to talk, open up our communication, realize the disconnect, realize that we were actually there and supportive of each other, even though we didn't feel it. And then perhaps the biggest thing that came out of Worldwide Marriage Encounter was that communication process, helping us to communicate, to share our feelings, giving us some tools that enabled us to share our feelings in ways that we hadn't before, especially me as a man. I'm a thinker, not a feeler. And so I know it's a little easier for you because you're a feeler, not so much a thinker. And so,
what? I am a thinker.
Well, there's a continuum between thinking and feeling, and I'm on the side of the thinking. You're on the side of the feeling.
I'm like right in the perfect balance. That's what you're saying, right?
We're all thinking. We all feel. No, you're on the very extensive end of the feeling, and I'm on the end of the thinking. So on that continuum, but it was really helpful to gain those tools, use those tools, and begin down a new role. So we certainly would recommend that. And I know you mentioned that you played a show last week about Retrovai. So
yes.
that is part of the Worldwide Marriage Encounter ministry, focused on relationships that are a little bit more in trouble, but often most of the same processes and tools have gone through. So Lillian, how can people learn more about that if they wanted to learn more?
Yeah. So Worldwide Marriage Encounters are for marriages that are, lost their little zing, just want a breath of fresh air, want to kind of like revitalize what you have. That's wwme.org. That's worldwidemarriageencounter.org. That's really simple, wwme.org. For marriages that are in crisis, which I have recommended people that I've coached, people that are friends, to go to Retrovai. And they now have a better website, and the website is called helpourmarriage.org. It used to be retrovai.org, but now it's helpourmarriage.org. And it is an unbelievable process. And, you cannot go into a marriage with a disposable mindset. We'll just cut it off, or we'll nuke it. We'll, destroy it. Because whoever, this is what I say, that the person you're with, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You can take that person and work on some of the bad and the ugly, but the good, of course, is always good. But the new person that comes in, you may just have bad, ugly, and worse. So you really don't know, because everybody at the beginning is just an unbelievably wonderful charmer. And of course, you're like ignoring some of the red flags. Like our son, Blake, he says that one of his jokes, because he's a funny guy. One of the jokes that he wrote was, he's not saying that his girlfriend was a communist, but there were certainly a lot of red flags. So we have a tendency to ignore these red flags when we're in that love stage. And so I just want to encourage you that if right now all you're seeing, and you're already committed in the relationship, that perhaps maybe if the two of you are willing, and this is something I'm going to put Robert on the spot. I've been saying to him, I want us to do a weekend workshop where we can really work on people's marriages and kind of use our experience and help people get to that other side. And I'm not saying that we don't have any issues or that we don't have any problems. And again, unicorns jump out of our way when we're walking in our home. That is not what's happening with us. But we absolutely have that core value that we are in love with one another. One of the things that we did when we went to a marriage workshop, and this is something that I would encourage all of you to do, is that we created a mission statement. I don't know, Robert, do you still have that on your desk?
Yeah, that's
We
right.
ha-
It's,
we-
I just look slightly to my right off the computer is sitting there right there.
Yeah, and it's a mission statement for our marriage. Do any of you have a mission statement for your businesses? Do you have a mission statement for your nonprofit or the business, whatever it is that you're doing? Usually, for your website, there's usually a mission statement. But again, just like the gallbladder and the liver, we tend to ignore our marriage as a business too. Do you have a mission statement for your marriage? And so this is our mission statement for our marriage. And you want to read it, Robert?
That would take a while. There's 7 or 8 bullets. You want me to
It's
read
real
it?
quick. Just read real fast.
Okay.
Okay.
So the first one is be madly in love and have a healthy love affair with each other.
Mm-hmm. I didn't want to have any love affairs with anybody else but him. So disclaimer.
Support, encourage, respect, laugh, and dance like no one is watching.
Dancing is very important.
Lovingly and respectfully resolve our disagreements.
Yes.
Create acceptance, abundance, healing, and great health.
Mhm.
Constantly grow individually and as a couple. Have crazy fun on our adventurous journey.
Yes.
It says, so we can be our best self with each other and God.
Yes. So that is our mission statement. And I remember creating this, and it was so special that I have 3 of them framed. I've got one in our bedroom, one in Robert's desk, and one in my office. The one in my office, this is the one I'm showing you, is the one from our bedroom. And it is so important that you create your intention for your marriage. But what happens when you have a spouse that you're dragging along? Continue working on yourself. Because if you don't work on yourself, you will resent that person who kept you from growth. And that's a limiting belief, right, honey?
Yeah, I think that some people, I don't know, I want to say hide behind the problems they see in their spouse or their partner.
Yeah.
In other words, instead of accepting responsibility for themselves and putting themselves under a microscope and thinking about how they could improve or be better, they kind of say, I see this flaw, and this marriage is not working. And when this person can work on that flaw, then we'll be better. But it's kind of putting up a wall, and it's kind of hiding behind. So yeah, I'm 100% behind it. People need to grow. They need to work on themselves. And a big part of that, as you say in your workshop, is that we have to accept responsibility for ourselves. Somebody said, I don't know, a week or 2 ago, it was Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. He said, I'm not responsible for anything beyond my fingertips. Mm-hmm. So, but he is saying he is responsible for everything that he does. So anyway, I think that's an important point.
No, that's really important, because that is when I coach people who have issues with their spouse or issues in their personal life with somebody else, they want to tell me about them. And I remember when I was going through the second part of that course that Robert and I was talking about, the single, divorce, and New Beginnings was the name of the course. But at first they started with widowed, divorced, and separated. And we quickly learned that the widow people wanted their husbands back, and the divorced and separated wanted their spouses to be dead. And we realized real quickly that's not going to work. So it changed to separated and divorced, but it was called New Beginnings. And then the widows went off to their own, and they were able to grieve and mourn in the way that it was appropriate for them. And I remember when I entered the second phase of the New Beginnings course, I used to look forward to learning about my ex-husband, the jerk. But honestly, who I really learned about was me, the jerk, and what I did to hurt the marriage, and because I can't change him. And that was a rule. And so I valued that so much that when I coach somebody who has problems with their spouse, or, you know, has problems with in their personal life with somebody else, we really focus on, I can't change the other person. And you can talk bad about them all day long. It's not going to change the person. But how can you change? How can you either accept it or walk away? Those are your choices. You accept it, or you accept it, or you change it, you know, basically. And if you cannot change it and you don't accept it, you walk away. So those are some of the choices that you have. But, you know, when I that was so important, that you look at yourself and the relationship, because there becomes this triggers, like, you can trigger somebody and things that other person can trigger you. But if you didn't have those triggers, they would have no power over you. So, or you would have no power over them. But how can you, and what advice would you give somebody who has a spouse, Robert, that goes kicking and screaming everywhere and doesn't want to grow with you? He's comfortable, she's comfortable, maybe they're, and addictions, abuse, beating up somebody, that's a deal breaker. I'm not talking about that. I am talking about a typical marriage that, maybe you get on each other's nerves.
That's like the toughest question there is, because if you have an unwilling participant, then that's difficult. But it comes back to what we said at the very beginning about commitment. If I was with a spouse that I felt was kicking and dragging and screaming and not interested, I would have a heart-to-heart about, are we committed to this? Mm-hmm. And kind of bring back to basics. Are we committed to this? And what are we committed to? And what is our dream? What is our hope? And does our relationship come into that dream and that hope? And if it is, are we willing to do whatever it takes? Are we willing to take positive action and then together think through, work out, research, what are the steps we want to take? In other words, it could be that the steps I'm recommending are not the ones they want to do. So perhaps you could say, look, why don't we both come together with alternatives for what we can do to get better, what steps we should take to improve, to grow, and then work through those. So that's kind of what I would say.
Yeah, that's like what we do when we can't agree. When you can't agree, you can't see eye to eye, and you're not willing to do this, and you're not willing to do that. So the question is, but what are you willing to do? And so there have been times in our marriage that Robert and I have had to physically separate to really contemplate, what are we willing to do? So he writes 5 things, I write 5 things, and we come together to see if we have anything in common. And I really do believe commonality plays a key role in all of this. And, what do we have in common? Because your spouse may be a couch potato, may not want to go out, but have you asked them to join you? Have you invited them to join you? And if they say no, go anyway. Go find a friend, go anyway. Eventually, hopefully, they'll want to come with you. They'll want to be with you. And if they don't, then perhaps maybe if they're not willing to grow with you, because I've come to Robert and I've said, I am committed to you and I'm committed to this relationship, but I am unwilling to live this way for the rest of my life. Isn't that an ear opener or an eye opener, Robert?
Yeah. There's no question that I have been committed to this relationship and remain committed to that commitment throughout our 27 years, and will continue to be. So when I hear you raise a serious concern, I'm all ears. I'm willing to listen, willing to consider, willing to figure out what needs to get done. And I do want to say that the Lillian McDermott radio show has been a big plus for us as well, because you've had what Dr. Gray,
Yeah,
with
John
the
Gray.
Men Are
Yeah.
From Mars, and also,
Gary
and he's
Chapman.
and Gary, I was just going to say, Gary Chapman was big for me because learning about the love languages shifted my thinking, because my thinking up until then had been that your love language was the same as mine, that we're all the same. And the point about the love languages helped me to realize that your love language is not the same as mine at all.
No.
And so I needed to,
although I like your love language. I love your love language.
It's good and all, but what I need to feel loved is not what you need to feel loved. And once I figured out that you were about touch, that you were about quality time, and mine is about acts of service, and other people may be focused on receiving gifts or lots of positive affirmation. We're all different, and the fact that we are different, because I think we made that mistake in the beginning. Maybe that's part of that initial
first 7 year.
Maybe that the initial phases of marriage, when you kind of fall in love, we were focused on how much alike we were, and oh my gosh, I can't believe I found somebody who's so much like me. But the truth was, we were alike in terms of our religious beliefs, our relationship with God, our
core values.
Family
we were
values.
very similar. Core values.
But when it came to our love language, the fact that I now know that you are loved through touch and through quality time, that helps me adjust from not just doing acts of service.
Yes.
So that was big. So, but I learned that on your show when you had Gary Chapman on it, and like you said, what's his name? Joel Gray? Is that what his name is?
John Gray.
John Gray.
John Gray. Yes.
He's been
men
insightful.
are from Mars, women are from Venus.
Yep. So the reason I thought about this was we were thinking about spouses that maybe were not being cooperative. Well, there are shows on your website or on YouTube or Facebook that they could listen to together and learn from the experts and how you interacted with them, just like I did. I learned and had a big positive impact on me. By the way, I want to mention to you that there are some questions.
Oh, are there?
If you want to deal with them. For example, one of them said, "Are you both nutritarian?" So we talked about health, and so my answer is yes, we are.
Okay. But here's the story behind that.
Okay.
The first 3 years that I was raw vegan, I was challenged to go raw vegan on the show, and I decided to accept the challenge. And that was the worst 2 weeks or worst month for Robert, because I was just trying to figure it out. And so what happened was Robert resisted after that month. He resisted. And I started making making extra meals for him. And I was making 2 meals. And then I got tired of that. And then I started making like his food, and then I'd freeze it. And if he wanted it, he could thaw it out. I mean, I went through different places, but it was Raymond Francis. It was after that show with Raymond Francis that Robert popped his head in my office and he just said, "I'm in." And it took him 3 years for that to happen, but it did happen. And we, every step of the way, we negotiated what I was willing to do and what he was willing to do. Do you want to add anything to that, Robert?
My taste buds gradually changed. And we resist because we're thinking, I can't do without my meat. I can't do without my sugar. I can't do without
your limiting beliefs. Yeah.
I loved eggs. I used to love to have an egg sandwich.
So we were talking about that last night, that you could have eggs 3 times a day.
Yeah. I liked eggs. So I have health issues, specifically osteoporosis, that was discovered 20 years ago. And Raymond Francis was, when I heard him talk about what he thought was the cause of it, it struck a chord. I resonated with it. And I said, you know what? I need to significantly reduce my sugar intake. I need to significantly reduce my animal products. And so I intellectually bought in and became committed. And of course, another health issue has come along that's gotten me to another level. And so, I don't even think of myself as nutritarian because I don't eat animal products at all. I think nutritarian, I would say I am
5 to
nutritarian.
10% of animal products.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but I don't allow myself that 5 or 10% because I'm in a desire of healing and a desire of health growing. But so, yeah, I think Dr. Furman's going to be on next week and talk more about nutritarian.
Yeah.
We're big supporters, and we definitely believe in the value of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And speaking of which, I want to acknowledge the fact that, this classroom, it started off as a radio show. It has changed my life. I mean, from even this last week, being able to reach out to some wonderful, incredible doctors to sit down with me and coach me and hold my hand through this process and still allow me to and still have that foundation of all these different, learning about the body and learning about, preferences that may not be mine, but maybe my spouse. All those, you can find that at whenyounneedafriend.com. You can find the audios. We're in every single, we're on BitChute and Odyssey and Facebook and YouTube. So I want to encourage you to go through every single one. If you go to whenyounneedafriend.com, at least the audio is there and you can see when it was done. And we have different, so you can do your own research at that point. And Robert, can you give me my 5? Yes, please. And so one of the things that I would like for you to do is please subscribe to the website. That way, when's the next workshop, because I'm telling you right now, and I don't know when it's going to happen, but so stay tuned. We're going to do a cleanse, the same cleanse that I did it's a 3-day cleanse. Just in 3 days, you can start removing some of these stones, sludge, whatever is going on. Even if you don't know you have it, it can cause other problems. So stay tuned, because we are going to have a cleanse, and that's going to be, everybody's going to be invited. There's going to be a charge for it because there's going to be a time requirement from Dr. Grameth. If she's willing to do it, it's time requirement for me as well. So there will be, just to help defray the costs. And so I want to encourage you to go to whenyounneedafriend.com, check out my sponsor, Dr. Jennifer Grameth. And then there's the affiliate sponsors, the Shop Now bag. Anytime you buy something through the website, it helps grow the classroom. Please keep in mind that we also have the New Truth series, and we are 3 DVD pre-orders away from ordering the 100 lessons from the Exodus. So if you've been holding off, now's the time to do it. The first order will be done as soon as. So we have the New Truth series. We also have the I Am the Solution workshop that's September 17th, 18th, and 19th. Remember, I suggest that you work on yourself. And if your husband, you invite her, your spouse, to the workshop. If they say no, you come anyway. But if you come together, it's amazing how much growth you will do. And just invite doesn't mean they have to come, because if you were to invite someone to your home and they can't show up, you're not going to get upset, but at least you invite. And so invite your spouse to come to the workshop. Do this together so that you can start. One of the things that I believe is the most valuable in our marriage is that we're both willing to grow. I think the day that Robert stops growing, or that I'm going to have to start pulling him, although when it came to nutrition, I felt like I was pulling him, but we still worked it out. He told me what he needed. I told him what we needed, I needed, and we came to an agreement. And those are the agreements that we tend to just ignore. If you make an agreement with your spouse, stick with it and stick it through. And then in 6 months, reevaluate that agreement. Does it still work? Does it not work? And that's something that Robert and I have done throughout our marriage. What is working? What is not working? How can we change it? Are you willing to change it? Those are the questions. But invite him to come to the workshop. And last, I want you to know that the classroom is now funded by the generosity of the people. So if you are looking for a place to tithe, and you want to donate to the classroom, please, whether it's $1 or $1,000 a month, anything that you can donate will be very much appreciated. Today, I am sharing our time with my best friend, someone that like last night, we were just talking. So much harm is caused when you're just sitting there watching television together. That is not time. That is not time together. And if we watch too much television, we get out of balance. And if we do something that's not, if he's not into, we get out of balance. So we listen to one another. So if you're in a situation where your spouse is difficult, it's really important to have a loving conversation about what are you willing to do to make this marriage better. I don't think that's an offensive question, is it, Robert?
It's an essential question that every couple needs to be willing to ask always. And there should never be a negative reaction to that question. Now, I mean, if somebody asks it every day, you might say, well, give me a break, but occasionally.
Or they could do what you say. Did we just talk about this? Sometimes I ask a lot of questions. So go ahead, Robert.
So in the workshop, in your I Am the Solution workshop, and in some of the personal growth work that we've done, one of the outcomes and one of the things that has been very major in helping us to improve has been learning about our ego. I guess I didn't want the show to go on, because this is about keys to loving relationships. Mm-hmm. And what happens is that each of us individually get caught up in our egos. Mm-hmm. And when we're in our egos, where we're not doing what's best to cooperate, to partner, to love, to build relationships, when we get really caught up in our egos, it's more like building moats and walls around us because we want to be right. We want to be in control. We want to be comfortable. And what happens is...
And looking good.
We want to look good. So what happens is because of those functions, because we get caught up in our egos, we're not at our best and we're not open to grow. We're more defensive. We're more attacking. And so what we had to learn was to shift to become our essence, to get out of our ego and become our essence. Now, we learned about that in personal growth. We learned about that from Eckhart Tolle's books. He talks an awful lot about that in his book. What is it called? The New Earth. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great book, by the way.
Yeah. So those are some resources to learn about it, but shifting from ego to essence. And that's one of the reasons why it's helpful sometimes to take a time out. When you're in the middle of an argument or an emotional discussion, you tend to spiral downward. It's helpful sometimes to take a time out, let the emotions run out and shift from your ego into your essence and say, really what's best, really what's important to me. And so I just wanted to share that because
I think that's a great point.
Many times that we've had to do that because I've gotten caught up in my ego or you've gotten caught up in your ego, and then we just get battering heads and worse.
Yeah. Well, I have an expression that I've used before, and I know you've used it back on me, is that my ego despises your ego and my essence adores your essence. And when we know that, we know when we're in our ego, and again, if people that I coach or someone is talking to me about how horrible their spouse is, and they say something else, well, have you invited them? Have you asked them? Have you encouraged them? Have you had a conversation with, oh no, I can't have a conversation with him. Oh, I can't have a conversation with her. And that's what they say to me. That is being in your ego. That is wanting to be right about the other person, not as committed as you are. So there's different ways the ego shows up in a marriage. And I'm glad that you pointed that out, Robert, because it is the destruction of a marriage to think, that we've got it all figured out, that I know what the other person is going to be like, and so on and so forth. Robert, I wanted to, are there any more questions? I just wanted to make sure that there aren't any. So, okay. So for those of you who are in turmoil, I really strongly want to encourage you to work on yourself. Just put a little pause, because as you work on yourself, you will probably see your mate in you, because we see in others who we are. And I hate to say that, because, we want to be the one that's right, and we want to be the one that's going to be above the fray. But sometimes we see in our spouse who we are, because it's a lot easier to fix them, to fix ourselves. Any questions, Robert, that are out there?
No, I don't see any other questions. There's some other comments, but I don't see any other questions.
Okay. So let me see. Kim Clark. Okay, that was the nutritarian question. Okay, perfect. And so I want to make sure that one thing that's being said is that personal growth, laughter, date each other, expectations can ruin a marriage. So negotiate, renegotiate.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yes.
Yesterday, I saw somebody say, so-and-so, their children moved out of the house because they grew up, and now they can start dating again. And I thought, oh my gosh, you need to date all throughout. Just wanted to mention that.
Yeah. And when Robert and I had little kids, and finances, like maybe after 9/11 or after, during that time when finances were a little tighter, we would close the doors of the kids. And what I would say is that unless a lung is falling out of something, unless you're bleeding, don't interrupt us. So we would have a little picnic in our living room, or we would make it romantic with candles, and we would do different things like that. So I want to encourage you to get creative and work with your partner to create the marriage that you want. Robert, thank you so much for being a part of today's class. I'm going to look at all your comments. I know, Robert, you have to go, but thank you so much for being a part of it today.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Maybe we'll get you to be a regular. How about that? And please remember, everything is workable. Everything is workable when you have God in your life. And please remember, we'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyounneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott and Robert, who's doing his job, wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever.
The opinions and advice expressed on the Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert before taking any steps to improve your life.
So somebody left a voicemail. So I'm not going to stop and listen to the voicemail, but if you have text, you can text me your question. If there's something in your life, something in your marriage that just doesn't seem that it's adding up, maybe there's a symptom in the marriage. And again, I will say that abuse and also neglect. I mean, neglect is something that could happen in a marriage. And but again, if your partner is willing to work with you, then you've got a chance. But if they're not willing to work, if you invite them to say, would you be willing to work with me at our marriage? Would you be willing to work at this marriage together? What are you willing to do? What aren't you willing to do? Because people do need to set boundaries. And, maybe there is a flaw in the marriage. Maybe there's alcoholism or a pornography addiction or, abuse, if alcoholism or abuse, that there's no end in sight. Sometimes you have to take a stand. And that's what Retrovi is about. And I believe that Retrovi and personal growth, you're not allowed to do any of that if you're an active drug user. The first love is the drug. So you can never compete with that. So there comes a time where you have to put your foot down and you have to say, I'm done. There's nothing that I'm going to do to make things better or make things right unless they do it themselves. And Robert, I don't know if you're going to join me or if you're going to stay away, but you're welcome to do either or. But it's very important that you recognize what is workable and what is not workable. When somebody is being abused or someone is in a relationship with an active drug addict, you've got to remove yourself from that, because if you don't remove yourself from that situation, then you're going to become an enabler, and they're going to say, well, we're going to draw the line in the sand, and if you cross it, I will leave you. If they cross it and you don't leave them, so you need to make a plan before you cross the line in the sand. If they cross it and you do not leave, you're setting yourself up for a lifetime of devastation and sadness, when you could be working on yourself. I mean, you could start working on yourself even while you're in the relationship. But if you have an active drug user, an active, person who is a womanizer or a cheater, or someone that is not honoring the commitment to the commitment, you do need to take a stand. And again, you'll know what's going on. You'll know how long to stay in the relationship, depending on what's your circumstance on the other side. And no matter if the relationship ends, you need to make a commitment to yourself that you are going to figure yourself out. Why would you pick that person? Why did the marriage fail? What was your part? Everything. You're responsible for everything that happens in your life. And so the good news is, if you created it, you can uncreate it. If you go to whenyounneedafriend.com, that's when you can start taking responsibility. And it's not about blame, shame, fault, or duty. It's about empowerment and freedom, which we discuss in the weekend workshop, September 17th, 18th, and 19th. And if you're listening to this class beyond that date, just go to whenyounneedafriend.com and go to the New Truth series to see what's up next. And I do want you to stay connected. If you are interested in a marital workshop that your spouse is willing to come to, even if he's willing to come to just to make you happy, that's good enough. That's good enough. Okay, so set apart. Please pray for me. My husband is a total jerk. I'm ready to leave for good. He actually followed his daughter. He allowed his daughter to bring his ex-wife to our home and our land. I wasn't even there, so I'm angry. I could just throw in the towel. Okay, set apart. Let's see if you said anything else. Are you still there? Are you still there? Set apart about the situation. See, I don't know what the situation is, because anybody can come into my land. I don't know if this is truly a jealousy issue, an insecurity issue, or is your husband trying to have a second wife live with you? I don't know. If it's the latter, that they want a second wife to be in your home, then that's something that you guys need to negotiate and talk through. And if there's not a meeting of the mind when it comes to that, then you're going to have to figure out what you're going to do. But anger, let me tell you, one of the things I learned about the liver and the gallbladder, I talk about this in the workshop, that emotions get trapped in our bodies. And so that set apart, that your body doesn't know who you're angry with. It assumes it's you. So you can be angry with your spouse, but you're going to feel the damage of that anger. I think it's like 5 minutes of anger causes your immune system to go down 8 hours. I'm not 100%, I'm quoting these statistics, but I don't have them in front of me, but it's like that. 5 minutes of anger can reduce your immune system 8 hours. And let me tell you, in today's climate, you want to be as healthy as you possibly can. So I really don't know your situation. And if it's unreasonable for them, that person could be rescuing somebody. Just because they're married to you doesn't mean that they didn't have a past with somebody else. Helping the child's mother is helping the child. So take a good look within. Are you being unreasonable, or are you being, or is there reason to be concerned about this? But I would have to do a coaching session in order to assess that with you. And you're welcome. As a coach, you could go to whenyouneedafriend.com and schedule time, or you can text me at 407-373-5959. So I'm sorry for your situation. So I'm sorry, set apart. Could you try counseling? Oh, there you go. That's what you were saying. Okay, Kim, that was very sweet of you to offer advice. Oh, what's up, Lillian and friends? Hello, top feed. So thank you so much for joining us today. I just want you to know that everything is possible. All is possible. And I want you to always remember that the commitment to the commitment is where all negotiations start. If you're not committed to the commitment, don't waste anybody's time and just move on. But I'm grateful that I got to share this information with you. Tomorrow, we were going to have Dr. Grameth, but Dr. Grameth, she is having a bit of crisis herself. So we're going to air one of her first classes that she did with us, so we can go back and review about the lymphatic system. But she'll be back and we'll talk about the Zyto and the emotional component of EVOX and the emotional component of health as well, which, by the way, set apart. When you are angry with somebody else, your body doesn't know it's somebody else, it will turn it in against you. And one of the things I learned about the liver and the gallbladder is that's where it stores anger. So I wonder if all those little stones are different angry fits that I had along the way, and now they're ready to be released. And I hope that you will make the choice to release the ego in your marriage and come together in love. So we will see you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Bye.